Hi, welcome to the Drama Free Living Podcast. It's Dennis and Lisa McIntee. And Lisa, I'm super excited about this series that we're doing. We've kind of put a lot of thought into it, and we really want to talk over the next couple weeks about this whole idea of delegation and accountability. And Lisa, we were talking with one of our clients just a couple of days ago, and he said a great statement. He said, it takes so much time, but it works well every time I do it. And
Rick is one of our clients, and he's just an amazing guy. And we knew we could give him a call and say, Rick, listen, we're going to be talking about delegation accountability. He's got a pretty amazing team, and he's been doing this for forever. And he was like, let me tell you, I've done this. I've led my team without delegating and without accountability, and it doesn't work.
Right. And so I think this whole idea of it takes so much time, but man, it works so well when I do it. So, I think part of the challenge is you have to invest time up front. And I think that's the key, right? Invest the time up front, and then the payoff comes later. And many times I think that's what happens with everything, like exercise. Why don't people exercise, right? Because I have to invest on the front end before I get the payoff on the back end. But it's worth it, right? The prize is worth the price. So we want to talk about delegation, accountability, maybe just some of the pains that we go through. And we kind of came up with 8 pitfalls that people have, that CEOs and leaders have when we think about this idea of delegation, not dedication.
Well, and I really like that. You gave that example of exercise, and exercise is a super great example because really it takes so much time. But when you do it, it really works. Nutrition, when it takes so much time, but when you do it and when you follow it, it really works. Investing in your family and your kids, in your relationship with your partner or your spouse, it takes so much time. But every time you do it, it works so well.
Yeah. So
and it's the same way. I think that's just kind of a great statement for life.
Awesome. So Lisa, we want to talk about the first pitfall, introduce it.
The first pitfall is really, it's a lack of trust in your team. We as leaders, we co-founded our organization, and nobody knows how to run this the way we do. No, this organization was birthed out of who we are. And so who else am I going to trust it to? And so it's very easy to have a lack of trust, and lack of trust in your team is like trying to build a house on sand, or trying to build a structure on sand, on quicksand. And it just, it slips and things happen, and you cannot build a strong structure on a shaky foundation or the shaky ground beneath the foundation. And it really, lack of trust undermines delegation, because without trust, we and our teams, we hesitate to give tasks, we hesitate to receive tasks, and it really just stops us.
Well, Lisa, and I think, it's good to remember that trust is not static, right? Trust is a dynamic, and so it's something you always have to work on. It's not, you don't do one activity and go, oh yeah, we trust each other. It's this continual ebb and flow. And so it's almost like a work in progress. It's something we're always talking about, we're always working on, we're always talking to clients about, talking to teams about, because it's that hidden variable that really makes all of the difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's a lot of different ways to restore trust. When trust is broken, it takes time. And in order to delegate well, in order to have a nice stream of accountability, really you have to be able to restore trust and rebuild trust. And there's 3 key things that we found that really work well to restore trust. And it is clear communication, accountability, and then also celebrating wins together. Those 3 things are key to restoring trust when trust has been broken, or if trust hasn't even been established yet.
Wow. And so let's just think about the other sort of side to this, Lisa, is like the trust. It takes time. It takes all these consistencies, celebrating wins. And then it also takes transparency with leaders, right? Because when people understand like your context, it just hit me, this idea of intimacy. Right? And intimacy with people really is you let them see into you. Intimacy is into me see. So how do we as leaders and CEOs, how do we create, this intimacy with our team, let them see into us, see our motive and our why? Because when people buy our why, we can sell them the how. Like this, the how and the what become easier when they're really bought into the why.
Absolutely. And with clear communication, if you've got a story, every story needs a really good plot to be successful. And
Right.
that's what communication is to trust,
Yeah.
trust is built on communication and transparency. And communication requires transparency to be able to be successful.
And it's really people understanding your story or understanding the story and the why. Because a lot of times leaders, we're great at knowing what to do, but we're not so good at knowing why to do. And what's fascinating, Lisa, is I run into trouble sometimes with our teams because I'm always telling them what to do. But then when I step back and take some time to really share the context, right? Really share like, hey, this is why it's so important, that our team makes better decisions, right? And many times I've heard this comment where they say, well, it's really helpful to know the context. Well, if I would have known that context, I probably would have made a better decision. And I think that falls on CEOs and leaders to really get good at sharing the context, not just the content.
And that allows our team to be able to trust that they're making the decisions they need to make in our stead. But when we share the context, the intent, it allows us to be able to feel like we can trust our team because they truly get us. If I have someone that truly gets me, I know that they are going to make decisions and they're going to have my best interest in mind. And if there's doubt, they're going to come back to me and ask, hey, I'm not sure about this. And so that clear communication, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. But as you begin to develop the relationship, it's kind of like dating.
Yeah, that's a
When
good
you
way to
first
say it.
meet someone and you're starting to get to know each other, and the longer that you're together, or the longer you're in a relationship and maybe even getting married, the longer that you build that intimacy and that foundation, the more that you know, hey, that other person is going to that's going to hurt their feelings, or they're going to want this done, and you just learn to know that person. And that's what your team does for you, is as you take the time to build that trust and to build that relationship, they begin to know the decisions that you would want to have made.
Yeah, because it really takes time to figure out how people think. Lisa, we were at a roundtable dinner with Brad Stevenson, and do you remember he said, you guys are finishing each other's sentences? And well, there's a reason, because in most situations, you know exactly the decision that I would make. Right or wrong, this is the decision. In most situations, I know this is the decision that you would make. And there's so much comfort and there's so much security in just knowing that. And then I even think about our team. We have some team members that have known us for 15 years, and we have other team members that have known us for 5 years. And there's just a different level of knowing how we think and a different level of comfort. And so, listen, we just want to encourage you. It does take time, but here's the deal, okay? If you want to go really, really fast, just go alone, right? Nobody can do it as fast as you can do it. Nobody can, do it as well as you can do it. But if you want to go really, really far, you got to build a team. And to build a team, you have to have delegation and that accountability. Those are sort of the twin sisters of really developing your team. Is what are you going to get off your plate? What are you going to put on other people's plates? What are you going to do? What are you not going to do? So that you have the best results and the best outcomes for your clients.
I love that. And what's fascinating is you did not say, if you want to go really, really far, you have to have a team. You said, if you want to go really, really far, you have to build a team.
Yeah.
And building is just work. It is just flat out work.
Yeah.
And so with clear communication.
I don't even like that. You say that and I cringe, like, gosh, I got to work at this. But you really do.
Yeah.
Right? You really have to work at building.
Absolutely. So with clear communication, it's laying out expectations, it's sharing goals, it's fostering an environment where everyone feels seen and heard. And those are just pretty simple things, but sometimes the simplest things we don't actually implement in our lives. And we know what to do. Yeah. It's just actually doing it.
Yeah.
And so then another thing to help build trust would be accountability. Holding ourselves accountable, holding each other accountable, and just being trustworthy in that, keeping your promises. So being accountable to keep your promises, being accountable to keep your deadlines, supporting one another.
Now, and listen,
which is different than accountability.
Yeah, well, Lisa, I would just want to stress this goes both ways. And I know that there are certain things that are I'm obligated to do, certain parts of a project that only Dennis can do. And what I love about having even a team is that I make myself accountable to the team. And what's awesome is that they will hold me accountable, right? I might get a call at 5 o'clock saying, hey, you said you'd get that video done, right? When are you going to get that video done? And it's so helpful to have that team because I know that I'm also accountable to the team. Right? There's certain things that only I can do. There's certain things that only they can do. And when we work accountability together, not sort of top down, but it's like we're really accountable to each other. And some of the best teams. So we have a client in Massachusetts, and the CEO says something really fascinating, and I've really tried to apply it. He said, we all work together. He says, as CEO, he says, I work for my sales guys. Right, I work for my production guys. Right, they not only work for me, but I work for them. And this whole idea of, hey, we're working together. We're working together, and that's how accountability is. It's a two-way street.
Absolutely. And I love that we're working together, that CEO says, hey, we're working together, because the other part of just establishing trust or rebuilding trust would be celebrating wins together.
Yeah.
And that's we're working together. We're in this together. When you win, I win. And when the other team wins, maybe a co-team, that we all win together because we're working together.
Yeah, or sometimes it's like, we celebrate other people's failures. Like when we see our coworkers as competition, not collaborators. And that's the real key here, is that if you're going to build trust, it's like you have to be a collaborator, not a competitor, right? Because if I look at you as a competitor, I'm not going to build trust with you. But how many times do different team members, maybe somebody drops the ball and a little bit like their other team members are happy about it?
Ooh, that hurts.
No, but think about like some of the gossip in the world we have today. Right? How many times do we sort of like read the gossip columns and we're kind of a little bit, yeah, they screwed up. I didn't do that. But man, I didn't. Right?
Hey, I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as them.
Yeah. And how many times do we do that? And
we as leaders and we as CEOs and C-suite, we have to kind of squash that concept in our team that we are not in competition with each other, but we're on the same team and we're in collaboration with each other.
Yeah, and Lisa,
we're celebrating each other.
Yeah, and Lisa, as we're talking about delegation, I think it's real important to remind everybody as CEOs, the one thing you can't delegate is you can't delegate culture. You cannot delegate culture. Now you can have people to help with it, right? You can have HR help with it and assist. But what you do flows out of who you are, and we're always teaching what we know, but we produce who we are. So if it's in your team, if it's in your culture, the first place as senior leaders, we have to look. We got to look here, right? What's it in inside of me?
Right, because if it's in your team, it's your responsibility to take care of it. It's no one else's. It's not your manager's responsibility. Ultimately, it's yours.
Yeah, and this whole idea of culture, Lisa, wins and celebrating wins and really looking back at the past and reframing the past and having this sense of like progress is super important. So there was a particular client, and a shout out to Northbridge Communities there in the Northeast. Jim and Wendy run a fantastic organization, and I love these guys. But I was there doing a workshop a couple months ago, and one of the executive directors who's up in Maine, his community's up in Maine, he came to me after we've been working with him for quite a while, but he came to me after one workshop and he said, Dennis, he said, I took one of your ideas. He said, and it has made all of the difference in our community. He says, we have what we call a wall of wins. So it's this big, and I haven't seen it. He just told me about it, but he did send me a picture. It's a great picture. But he says, we created what we call wall of wins. And every day, different team members come in and they just post different wins for the day. And then when they get together at their meetings, it is this visual reminder of, hey, we're making progress.
Look what we did.
Look what we did, right? And the trust that's happening in that team is making all of the difference. And honestly, Dean told me, he said, it turned the culture around. So listen, if you want to turn a culture around, you got to start figuring out like how to notice wins and how to help people see a sense of progress. Not that, we have challenges, and they still have challenges, and they still have big roadblocks, and they have obstacles. But learning to reframe these different things, like what is an obstacle, what is a win, and so that was super helpful, and I was just so proud of him. when he told me, it's like, hey, we have wall of wins.
That's incredible.
So that's an idea for you. Throw it out there, right? Maybe you get a wall of wins of some way so that you can start to celebrate progress.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
good.
it.
So,
And then another part of being able to just build delegation, build accountability is the fear of losing control.
I'm so glad I don't deal with this. I am so glad I have figured this out. And Lisa,
I'm glad you figured it out too. I really am.
Lisa, you have a quote that you heard from Dan Sullivan that is really good on this.
Yes. So it is be in charge of what you do best and allow the team to be in control. Now, Dennis is part of Strategic Coach, and you were recently in a workshop with Dan, and Dan was teaching, and he made this statement. And I thought, wow, that was such a great statement. Be in charge of what you do best. Be in charge of what you do best and allow the team to be in control.
Well, and I think there's this whole essence of how do you stay in charge but not be in control? How do you stay in charge and not be in control? And it's this whole idea of allowing people to sort of decide how to do things, right? How they want it done. I've been famous for sort of dictating, hey, here's how we're going to use Trello. And honestly, Lisa, or here's how we're going to do this process. I mean, how many times have I done that? Now, Lisa, am I the best process builder?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for lying. It's wonderful.
No problem.
Yeah, no, it's and the team knows, and isn't it funny? Sometimes I find myself going, okay, here's how we're gonna manage this project, and I went, wait a minute, I'm just gonna shut up. You guys figure. I'm gonna leave. This is what we want. This is when we need it done. You guys figure out how to do it.
Because and the team knows that you are not the best one to be doing this. You're not the best one to be building processes. So it's not that you're dumping, you're actually delegating and releasing control, because for you to do it, it's not what you are best at. And so that would be kind of creating a mess.
Well, Lisa, I think that's dumping, right? Dumping is when you give responsibility, but you retain control. Right? And delegating is when you have to release control and allow other people to control how these things are done. And that is kind of the fine line, right? Are you releasing control? Because I think you can not only delegate tasks, but you should delegate responsibility, right? Responsibility for how these things get done. You do not have to have a say in everything. Let me just release you, okay? You don't have to have a say in everything. And, be in charge, but really being in charge is like, this is the success criteria. This is when it's done and done well. This is what it looks like. But everything in between, just let your team deal with it. And they're probably better than you at it anyways. And so always be in charge of what you're great at, right? That thing that you do better than anybody else, whatever that is, be in charge of that gift, but allow your team to have control. Now, Account Tabs, they had a survey, and they said that 59% of employees feel like they work for a micromanager. Right? So 59% of you out there, your team feels like you're a micromanager. Okay? That's just what the survey says. But whether that number is correct or not, we do know it's kind of a higher number.
Absolutely.
Right? But there's reasons for it. Let's just be honest, right? It's sometimes people fear losing control, desire for perfection. Right? They have this idea of perfection. Now, here's the thing, Lisa. Perfection is a myth. I mean, nothing is perfect. I think other than God, nothing is perfect. Right? I mean, because when you say, oh my gosh, it's totally perfect. Well, does that mean it can't be improved just like 1%? Could you have done it faster, cheaper, easier, better? Maybe just a tiny bit. Everything can always be improved. And so this desire for perfection. Now, we're not saying do bad work, but, nothing is perfect. And sometimes we have that perfectionist, mentality. And here's what's fascinating is that's why we don't give away control, because we want it perfect, and then the twin sister of perfectionism is procrastination.
Absolutely. And that's why we become micromanagers.
Yeah.
Is because we want it perfect and we think we know what it takes for it to be perfect. But it's not us truly working in the area of our best gift. And along with that study, 68% said that micromanaging lowers morale, and 55% said it hurts productivity.
It actually hurts productivity. It's like we think we're like making it more productive, and we're actually hurting it. Now, listen, Lisa, I know there are people here listening to the podcast, either maybe you're watching us on YouTube right now, or you're on your favorite device, Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And you're probably saying, oh, listen, that's great for you guys. That can't work in my organization, right? Yeah, that'll never happen. Listen, John McKay from Whole Foods, they just did a huge turnaround, and the big thing that happened to create this turnaround is that they gave almost 100% of their responsibility to their store managers. Instead of big corporate, sort of commanding and demanding, they gave each store manager almost 100% autonomy to run the store in their markets, how they see fit, and it changed the dynamic. But if you have this idea of perfect, now that's a larger organization.
And that's not something that happened overnight.
Yeah.
It's something that they did intentionally. They just didn't one day wake up and say, okay, store managers, you're in charge.
We're going to lose control. Right. And so, listen, we want you to make that sort of your aim is how can you continue to release control, stay in charge of what you do brilliantly, but continue to lose that control. Another one, Lisa, is uncertainty. Right. And here's the interesting thing that I've discovered about the future personally is that the future is really just guessing and betting. Right. When I look out at the future, it's I'm literally making my best guess. I'm looking back at the past going, this worked. So now I'm looking in the future and I'm going to bet on this. I'm going to make this bet. And when you think about it, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but a key to this future is the uncertainty. And how do you navigate through uncertainty? And things are going to be uncertain. But when you have clarity on what the uncertainties are, I think then you can step in and create plans to do it. So Lisa, I don't know if you remember this particular person at the roundtable was a roundtable participant, and he was really making almost a life-changing decision. And he was in his hot seat, and he was having this conversation. People were batting ideas, and I could almost see in his mind, he was kind of just confused because, in the roundtable, he had all these different suggestions. People were saying this, and he didn't know what to do. And I said, okay, hold, stop for a minute. And I just went to the whiteboard, and I said, hey, tell me with this situation, everything you're certain about. And he just listed out 7 or 8 things that I said, great. I said, let's just take a minute, look at it. This is what you're certain about, right? These are the things that never will change. You're totally certain about. I said, now tell me what your uncertainties are. Right. And we listed 4 uncertainties. And I said, now just take a minute, look at it. And he looked at it and he said, I know what to do. And it was this idea. So when the uncertainties got clear, what was certain, what was uncertain, he was able to take his next step. And I think the challenge is when things are uncertain, people don't do anything. I've had this multiple times. We have another CEO. I was talking with him in Palm Springs, and he was trying to make this decision about releasing his CFO. And so I remember talking with him there, and I said, okay, listen, what are all your certainties? He said, this. And I said, okay, now tell me your uncertainties. There was silence, and he said, I know what to do. He didn't even have to list his uncertainties. But when it just got clear to him, and clarity really is power. So what are you unclear about? And one way to get clarity is just list out your uncertainties and list out your certainties. And what you'll find is that your brain will start to go to work, because your brain goes to work on reality. It doesn't go to work on a story. And so it's a way to give your brain something to work with.
Absolutely. And I love that our clients, especially our roundtable participants, they can utilize that platform and that opportunity to just list out certainties, list out uncertainties, have a time of synergistic banter going back and forth, and being able to truly work out the issues and the problems that they're having in their companies and then in their decisions and for their future. It's an amazing platform that they truly utilize, just being able to pull on you, but to be able to pull on each other.
Yeah. Well, listen, and I'm really amazed about the roundtable because a lot of these things are discussed, right? Delegation, accountability. Now I was thinking, well, why is it being discussed this way? Because each of these members are building teams, right? And they're creating a bigger future. And the reality is you cannot create a bigger future alone. You can't. It's you have to have relationships. You have to build teams to be able to do that. And that's why really delegation and accountability is such a, I think we talk about it every single roundtable quarterly workshop that we have.
Someone always has a part of delegation and accountability that they're trying to work through.
Yeah. So it really is a skill you've got to continue to master and hone. And, and it is an art. I think delegation and accountability, there's a science to it. Here's how you do this. But there's also an art because people are so unique. You're unique as a leader, right? As a CEO, you're unique, but also the team that you have, they're unique. And so there isn't necessarily a one size fits all. There's frameworks and there's principles and there's best practices, but sometimes the best practice shouldn't be your practice, right? Sometimes the best practice shouldn't be your practice. Now learn from other people, but that's where, building a unique organization, I think that's the fun of maybe having a lot of the roundtable participants, because they're in different industries and they're all building unique organizations that really fit them.
Yeah, and I love that. And along with that, we have to be careful, because sometimes we'll look at someone else's idea, what someone else is doing in their company, and we're like, oh, that worked for them, me too.
Right.
And then you try it and it doesn't fit you. It doesn't fit your gifts. It doesn't fit what the industry that your company is in. And then you see, oh yeah, look what they did. Me too. That's what we're going to do. And so being able to truly hone in what you are good at and what your organization looks like in your industry is a vital part of just building this, and that's in the process of not keeping control and that fear of losing control.
Yeah, and then the other thing, Lisa, we just have to mention it just real quick, okay, is this whole idea of ego, right? Sometimes, people want to be the man. I want to be the guy. Right, and they sort of have this, I did this, right?
That's kind of a big deal with C-suites, with leaders of organizations, because you have to have a lot of oomph to be able to be in that position to lead, and you have to have pretty broad shoulders to be able to do that. So there is a tendency to be the man, because that's
or the woman.
Or the woman, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to shoulder a lot of responsibility. You have to shoulder a lot from leading these people and pushing this organization forward.
Well, and truth be told, Lisa, I mean, I've said sometimes like, well, it all depends on me, right? Or if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to, if I don't do it, it's not going to happen.
And do you know what that does? Is that devalues your team. If you say, it's all on me, and if I don't do it, it's not going to happen, that devalues your team.
And think about the trust that's being destroyed, and you've done that. And then you're complaining about why they procrastinate and don't take responsibility.
Or why they don't trust you.
Yeah, and you have created this exact scenario, right? And so we've seen that. Lisa, this has been fascinating. This has been fun. What's hitting your brain right now is like your big takeaway?
I think that lack of trust in teams and just wanting to keep control are two huge aspects that leaders of organizations typically struggle with. Yeah. Because in order to get where you are, you've had to have control. And in order to get where you are, you've had to kind of just trust yourself and be a little bit leery of the people that you have around you to be able to push forward. And we get burned. We get burned as leaders.
It happens.
And people sometimes aren't as forthcoming as they should be. And it's difficult. So you begin to not trust people. And then when you do that, you take the power out of being able to build a team and build an organization. Yeah,
Lisa, I think as we're kind of talking, I'm thinking about two questions for me, and I'm just going to give you two questions to think about over the next week. Is first of all, how can I increase trust with the people around me? Like, what are the things that I need to do that are within my power to increase that trust? What are some of the things that I need to do to increase trust? And then what do I need to give away, right? What do I need to lose control of? What are some things that I'm holding on, right? Because me holding on to these things has got us here. But for us to go there to this next place, I've got to lose a little bit more control. I got to stay in charge, right? But so what do I need to give away? So I just want to leave you with those two questions. What do I need to give away, and how can I increase trust with our team? And Lisa, we did want to give away a free giveaway, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So what we've got is the Focus Leader 5-Day Challenge. So it's really 5 delegation tips. Okay, 5 delegation, time hack, and accountability tips kind of all wrapped into one. And what you're going to get is for the next 5 days, just go to the link. We're going to put the link, go to the landing page, sign up for it. In your email for the next 5 days, you're going to get 5 quick videos, 30-second videos with a key concept and an action step. So you're going to get 5 hacks to increase accountability, increase delegation, and really be the kind of leader and CEO that you were meant to be.
And you can do anything for 5 days. This is something, it's a quick hack that you can implement in 30 seconds to a minute. In each day is a new hack. Here, this is something you can implement. And when you begin to put these things in front of you and begin to implement them, you become a better leader and a stronger leader and a better delegator.
Right. So if you want to enhance your decision-making skills, enhance your delegation, it's there for you. And this has been fun. We'll see you next time on the Drama Free Living Podcast.